Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everybody. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 9:30 p.m. Friday night, April 23rd. I'm happy to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is up to us, and it's a 30-minute program. We're going to be on for half an hour. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And Wednesday night we were talking about, it's an article, actually Monday and Wednesday night, we were looking at family violence and child abuse. And this article can be found at www.familyviolence.alberta. I think it's .ca. Yeah, www.familyviolence.alberta.ca. It's a great article regarding child abuse and the whole issue surrounding family violence and what it does to children. And we were looking at it all week in the evenings, and we're pretty much to the end of the article. So that's what we're going to continue on with tonight, and we're looking at what to do if a child tells you about abuse. We actually started that on Wednesday night, and we're going to finish that portion of it. Probably finish the whole article tonight. I'm not sure. We'll see. There's how you can help, ways to get involved to help a child, right? And if you're concerned about a child or young person outside your home, what to do, things like that. So we're going to continue on with this, and I'm just happy to be here. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is not a professional show. I don't have any professional counseling certificates or therapist certificates or anything like that. I'm just a person who pays to do this Blog Talk show because I really feel like the only way we're going to really stop child abuse and prevent child abuse is to talk about child abuse. And really, mainstream society needs to hear about it. The survivors like myself, I'm a survivor of child abuse, and I grew up in a violent home and, full of all kinds of depression and mental instability with my parents. And it was just kind of not a good environment for children to grow up in. And it's, for survivors, we know all about it. But the rest of society, who did not grow up in abusive homes and maybe haven't really even run across anybody who's been abused or that they knew have been abused, it's a whole different world for them. And I just think that if we're going to ever make a change, we need to stand up and start speaking out against child abuse, start standing up for children, right? We see the reports in the paper. We see the reports on the news. Children are dying every day at the hands of caregivers and parents and child sexual predators and people who get a hold of these children. And it's just horrible. It really needs to stop. And, most people just look at those reports and they might think, oh, how sad, and then that's it. They don't sit there and think, oh, this is a real child. This is a real baby or a real toddler or a real young person who is never going to be able to experience life. Their life has been stolen from them. And if they aren't killed by their parents or caregivers or child sexual predators, their lives are basically, a mess because of the aftermath of the abuse, So, really, we have to get involved, every single one of us. So that's what I thought, I'd just do this Blog Talk show, add my voice to all the out there, thank God, and just be one more voice, just to say we need to really work on this as a society. This is everyone's problem, and it's not going away until we make the changes that need to happen. And really, it's going to take a huge change in the way we feel about in our society. Helping parents who are having a hard time coping, helping people with substance abuse problems who have children. That's why nobody really wants to get involved, because it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of effort to really stop child abuse. But I think the main key and the main goal right now really is just education, to promote awareness, education, and prevention of child abuse, because so many people just really don't think about it. And, in their daily, day-to-day living, they don't think about the fact that children are dying at the hands of caregivers and parents, and so nothing's really done about it, and no one wants to talk about it. So that's what I thought. I'm just going to get on here, start talking about child abuse, and just be one more voice. So thanks so much for tuning in. And if you find that the subject of abuse bother you, then turn the show off. You have to listen at your own discretion, and we should all know what's good for us to listen to. And if the subject bothers you, it's your right and your obligation to turn it off. And if you're a young person under the age of 18, especially young people, right, you might want to have an adult listen to this with you. There's a lot of adult material on here, and I fight for child rights. I stand up for children. I believe that online safety for children is a huge issue. And so if you're a young person listening right now, and you're quite young and you haven't had permission to listen to this show, you should get permission to listen to this show. It's so important. There's so people out there just looking to get hold of children and child sex predators and whatnot who are just waiting to come across children. I think that you should let someone know, an adult in your home, or someone like a teacher, or a counselor at school, a coach, a mentor, someone who you look up to and you trust and have proven themselves trustworthy, to get them to listen to the show with you, and that way they can tell you whether or not you should be listening to it, right? And then they can help you if you have questions and whatnot. I always say this on my show because it's so important, because I don't know where the players are nowadays, so that's why. So we have about 25 minutes left, and we're going to get right into the article here. We left off. You can go back and listen to the other shows, or you can just pull up this article at www.familyviolence.alberta.ca. It's called Child Abuse. And it's a great article, like I was saying, and we already covered it, so we're not going to go back over it, but there's some really good information there regarding child abuse, the impact that it has on children, what is child abuse, right? Conditions that increase the risk of child abuse, how abuse, neglect, and exposure to violence affect children. All of this stuff is in this article. Exposure to violence affects child development, and how can you tell if a child is being abused, which that is so important. We have to know the signs and symptoms of all the different kinds of child abuse. So important because we have to look out for children, right? They are not always and should not have to be responsible for their own protection against abuse, right? We are their protectors. The parents should be protecting them. Someone in their lives should be looking out for them. A lot of times kids are threatened, their lives are threatened, and they're told not to tell, or they'll be killed, or the abuser will tell them, if you tell, I will kill someone in the family, or the kid's pet, right? They will do all kinds of manipulative things to get kids to not tell, and so it's so important to know that, to know what the signs and symptoms are, first of all the different types of abuse, and then to know how to report it. Excuse me. So that's what we're looking at tonight, is what to do if a child tells you about abuse, right? We already went over most of it, but they said when you're with a child, find a private, quiet place to listen, and I'm reading right from the page here. Listen calmly and without judging. Let the child talk without interruption for as long as the child wants, and if you must ask a question to understand what the child is telling you, wait until the child has stopped talking and then ask your question. That way you don't interrupt them, and then they get off, they get sort of lose their train of thought, and then they won't remember what they were talking about, sort of thing. And it says, reassure the child. Reassure the child that it is right to tell, and tell the child that the abuse is not the child's fault. And then tell the child you do not deserve to be abused. Nobody does. Acknowledge how the child might be feeling, and say, I'll try to help. Close the discussion. Ask, is there anything else you'd like to say now? Explain what you will do next. And again, reassure the child that telling is the right thing to do, and tell the child you will have to report the abuse. Someone will help them. It says, then they go on to talk about when you are no longer with the child, you saw and heard as the child was talking to you. Quote the child's words as much as possible. Use words that describe that you can see or hear. For example, a bruise, this is what you might write down. A bruise almost covered the child's left knee, and red welts were on the child's upper left arm. Not the child has been hurt, right? Because you have to be specific, right? You want to have very specific information. The child said, I'm scared to go home because my dad is going to be mad at me. And you don't want to write, the child seemed afraid of the father. So the whole idea is to be very specific when you're writing down this information. If a child comes to you and tells you they're being abused, or let's say you notice signs and symptoms because you've read up on all the signs and symptoms, and you recognize that this child is being abused, this is really so important to just get the specifics and not write the words down that you in the way that you would write it. We're supposed to write exactly word for word what the child said. Because we can mess up a case for a child if we don't report abuse properly. It's so important, and we don't want that, because then the child ends up back in the home and really stands the risk of losing their lives at the hands of this, whether it's a parent or caregiver. It's so important to know how to report abuse. It's very simple, just very simple, easy information regarding how to report child abuse, right, and how to do it properly. And that's just asking who, first of all, who caused the abuse, when, where, and how, you know what I mean? Very simple. We're not supposed to lead any questions on, right? You know, you're not supposed to actually lead the whole thing. You're supposed to let the child tell you in their own words, and then write down exactly word for word what they said. So important. And it says here, keep your notes and information confidential and secure, but report immediately to authorities. It says do not interrupt the child's story, and do not overreact in front of the child. Do not show horror or anger, because the child may stop talking. Yeah, because if they see that the adult in the situation is all of a sudden emotionally upset by it and you know, maybe becomes angry or something, then they might just clam up. You know, they won't say any more, right? It says do not make comments about the situation or the people. The child may stop talking. And it says do not express opinions or judgments about anything. The child may stop talking. It's just best to let them just tell the story, don't interrupt it, and then write it down. Do not make promises you cannot keep, it says. Do not promise that you won't tell anyone. Legally, you must report abuse. And do not promise the child what will happen, because really you could be making a promise that just doesn't come through for that child. So just not to promise anything is the best thing. And do not promise the child that things will get better, because, you know, those might be empty promises, right? It says, do not conduct your own investigation. Do not ask leading questions. For example, did blank happen? Or probing questions. For example, has this ever happened before? Do not check out the child's story before you report the abuse, right? We're supposed to just report the abuse because it is the law. It is not up to you to decide if the child's information is true or accurate, or if the child is at risk. This is the responsibility of Child and Family Services authorities or the police. It is your responsibility to listen to the child with respect, to report that a child told you about abuse, and to treat the child with dignity, courtesy, and respect. And the next portion of this article is report the abuse. It says, if you suspect a child is being abused or neglected by a parent or guardian, report your suspicions immediately. Call the police, your local Child and Family Services Authority, or the 24-hour Child Abuse Hotline. And they have a hotline here, 1-800-387-KIDS. And, you know, I haven't called that number, so I don't know if it's a good number or not. If you and it's probably a Canadian number because this is out of Alberta, Canada, right? If you suspect someone other than a parent or guardian is abusing a child, report your suspicions immediately to the police. Look in the emergency pages of your local telephone directory to find the telephone number of police in your area. And I actually have done that. I've gone through the white pages and even the yellow pages and found all my emergency numbers, and they're all there, and it's great to have that handy and to know where those numbers are. The Child, Youth, and Family Enhancement Act ensures that children are safe and that their needs are met. The Act supports families to meet the needs of their children. Children are not removed from their home unless they are unsafe and there are no other options. And the Criminal Code of Canada has rules for dealing with crimes against children. And these crimes include physical and sexual assault, other sexual crimes, and not giving the child what is necessary to live. So it's so important, right? Children are not removed from the home for no reason. Now, I know in the past, I've heard stories about children being, I've never known anybody personally, but I've heard stories and sadly, from people who've reported that their children were removed in error. But the thing is that we had an intervention done when I was a toddler, and we were not removed from the home, and we really should have been, because the abuse just continued on and on. But so many times their kids are not removed, and they really should be. But they don't quite always just take kids out of the home. There has to be real problems. The child, when they feel that that child's life is in danger and that it is not a safe environment for that child, they will remove the child. Thank God. And they, you know, it's sad, but you know what? Better than leaving the child in the home to be killed, and or you know, just the abuse just continues on, and that child's life is ruined, and then they have to try to, you know, get over it as adults, you know, with all these issues, and then they might turn to substance abuse and have all kinds of mental problems and emotional problems because of the abuse. So, you know, it's, you know, there's no easy answer to this situation, because when they remove the child, quite often they end up in foster care, and the foster care situation is no better and sometimes worse. That's why we have to do what we have to do to make these changes, right? And that's what I'm saying. It's not going to be an easy task. It's not going to be something that's going to happen overnight. But I think if the more people get, you know, educated first of all, on what's going on out there, and get the information, and then find out who in their own communities is actually doing some really good work with children, and support that. You know what I mean? Or get on with a group that's actually doing some awesome work to help save children's lives and to make this world a better place for children, and then just get involved, because obviously it's working, so they must be doing something right, and so that's the ones we need to support, right? Groups that are actually making a difference in this world, and give them a little hand whenever we can. I know everybody's time is limited, like my own. I have to work full time, and I'm busy, and my sweetheart's terminally ill, and I've got all kinds of stuff going, but yet something drives me to want to stop child abuse, and it's like I think about it from the time I wake up in the morning until the time I go to bed, because I know that there's kids out there right now who are being abused and tortured and sexually abused and ill-treated in every way, including neglect, and emotionally battered and verbally battered and physically battered, and this is just not going to stop, and so that's my whole goal, is to really become 100% involved in child abuse prevention and human rights abuse prevention. But for now, I have to work full time, so just like everybody else, we have to do what we have to do. But even just doing something that would maybe seem kind of small in your own eyes, it's actually huge in the whole scheme of things, because if we all do one little thing to do our part to prevent child abuse and stop child abuse, it makes a huge difference in the long run. If all of us do one little thing, it adds up to be one big thing. So that's what I'm saying. We all have limited resources as far as money goes and stuff like that, but I think it's really mainly about education and looking out for the kids in your life, right? If you're around a lot of children, you just keep an eye out for them and make sure that they're not being abused, and if you have, for your own children, watch out for them so that they're not being sexually abused, right? It's so important. And 90% of abuse happens from people that the child knows, whether it's a family member, a parent, a guardian, or a family friend. It'll be someone that the child knows, because that's who's around the child, right? So we have to start in our own homes, really. We have to start in our own homes. We have to start in our own communities and start there, right? Because that's where the abuse is happening. And so it's really a matter of education and knowing what the signs and symptoms are, and then doing the right thing and making the call, and not allowing a child to remain in a home that is, that their lives are in danger, and that there's real abuse going on. So it's just so important to know what's happening, right? Education, I think, is the key, and the more we become educated regarding this issue, the chances are that we will be able to make a difference, right? But if we just keep pushing it under the carpet and pretending it doesn't happen, nothing will be done. And that's why I just keep saying, as much as we can do, that's what we should be doing, right? I know, we can't all stop working to go out and advocate for against child abuse, right? But the whole thing is every little bit that we do helps and does make a difference, right? So I think it's worth it. And the next part of the article says, help the child as a trusted adult in the child's family. If a child or young person trusts you enough to tell you about abuse, you are now officially an important person in the child's life, whether you chose to be or not. You do not need to be bonded to the child for life, but you have to be aware that what you say and do will be very important to that child, and or to the child. If you are going to stay in touch with the child, for example, if you are a family, friend, teacher, coach, or relative, talk with the child about how you will act together when you are around other people in the future. And if you do not expect to stay in touch with the child, say goodbye and let the child know that telling was the right thing to do. And if you have not had a relationship in the past but are willing to stay in touch with the child, talk about what sort of contact you are willing to have. Tell the child how to contact you. So that's if you have not had a relationship in the past with a child, but you're willing to stay in touch with them. Talk about what sort of contact you are willing to have, whether it be like by email or writing or, whatever, telephone calls. Tell the child how to contact you. Above all else, be honest with the child or young person. Other adults have probably broken their promises, violated trust, or lied to this child, and you need to demonstrate that some adults speak the truth, honor trust, and keep their promises. So that's just so important, right? Because they're going to look up to you, because if they looked up to you enough and trusted you enough to tell you that they were being abused, they're really going to look up to you, right? So it's a good idea to follow through with this properly, right? How can you help? If you live in a home where children are neglected, abused, or exposed to family violence, as an adult in the home, take responsibility. Do everything you can to give the children a healthy place to live. Do it even if you are not the children's parent or guardian. Sometimes adults have huge pressures and challenges in their lives. Even so, children deserve a safe, healthy, and affectionate home. And here are some things you can do to help children get over the difficulties in their lives, be safe, and grow into healthy adults. Number one, admit that exposure to abuse and violence is harming your children. If another adult is violent or abusive, you are not responsible for the abuse. The abusive person is responsible. But as an adult in the home, you are responsible to protect the children. And that's the truth, right? Because so not is it always a two-parent issue where both parents are abusing the children, but the situation is that, as an adult in the home, you're responsible to protect those children because you are the one who has the abilities to do it. And so, people have to make the right decisions when it comes down to that. If you're living in a home where there's violence and abuse, but you're not the one who's committing it, you still have an obligation to those children or that child to protect them, right? And to make sure that they are safe. So number two, make a commitment to do everything you can to give the children a safe and healthy home, whether it is with you in this household or in some other place. So it's just so important, like especially in domestic violence situations where there's children involved, and it's so hard because we all know because women's shelters are quite full. Quite often people when they do go to seek help, they just can't get the help that they need. Women on the run and even some men on the run. I know this because I know men who have been abused in domestic violence situations, and it's horrible. Just really, it can happen. And most men don't talk about it. It's just too much of a stigma. But there's domestic violence against anyone is wrong, whether it's a male or a female victim, right? So it's so important to realize that. It says here. So yeah, people in domestic violence situations, they always think, well, where would I go? Where would I take the children, right? But if you think your life is in danger and you feel that your children's life is in danger, then you have to get out, right? Because, you don't want to be responsible for making the decision to stay in the home and then your child gets killed by the abuser, because that's a terrible thing to live with for the rest of your life. And it's better to be kind of, sort of suffering for a little while, not having all the great, luxuries of a great lifestyle for a while until you can get back on your feet. But it's so much better than sitting around being battered by an abusive partner and watching your children being battered as well. It's not right. It has to stop. And so the other adult in the situation has to take responsibility and say, okay, it's not going to be the greatest, but we are getting out because I want to save my children's life. I want to save my life, right? It is so important. Too many people are dying all the time, losing their lives to the hands of abusive people, and their kids are killed too. We see this in the paper quite a bit, where the mother is killed or the father is killed. Generally, it's the mother. It's more often the mother, but it's happened where the father was killed, and that's the truth. You just got to get out there and search it out. And then the children are killed too, right? So it's so sad, and it's just horrible. So yeah, domestic violence, it's a huge problem, and I wish everybody would just make sure that they have a safety plan. First of all, get a safety plan together and know what your next move will be if you have to leave the home in a hurry, and know what to do, you know what I mean? And have those numbers ready, have all of your information ready, have your children ready, and that way if you have to leave the home in a hurry because your life is in danger or your children's lives are in danger, you can get out, right? So it's so important to be ready, right? I just can't stress that enough. I've done shows, like whole weeks worth of shows on domestic violence. It's such a huge issue. I just wish people would get help, right? It says, tell the children the abuse is not their fault. They are not responsible for the abuse or the problems or challenges of the adults in the household. They do not deserve to be abused. Nobody does. And that's so important, I know when I went to I went to my friend's house because my mom had beaten me up really bad one day, and I was about 13 and a half years old, and I didn't have anywhere to go, and I was about ready to pass out, and I went to my friend's house thinking I'd go there, and these people intervened for me, And it was just so awesome because just they told me, they said, you don't deserve to be treated like this. And no one had ever told me that before, not in my own home, and no other parents of my other friends or anything that knew the abuse was going on and didn't report it. No one had ever told me that I didn't deserve to be treated that way, and it made me feel really good to know that someone actually was thinking of me, that I didn't deserve that, that I deserved better treatment. So it's so important to let kids know that the abuse is not their fault and that no one deserves it, right? It says, find ways to show the children environments that are safe, predictable, and loving. Children need to know that most adults are kind to one another and that most homes are safe. Children need to experience what a safe, loving, and stable home feels like. They need to see how people act in homes like that. They need to they need to know that a home does not have to be abusive and violent. And that's just so true, right? These people that intervened for me, that's the first real normal family situation that I had actually been allowed to sort of be around for any length of time. And because I used to stay with them for weeks on end after they intervened on my behalf, and they sort of took me in as a part-time kid just to take the pressures off my mom, and also to give me some a safe place to be, and also to show me some real family values, and to show me some love that I was seriously needing. And so it was so awesome because they just treated me like one of their own kids, and welcome to their home, and they allowed me to see what a normal family would be like. Had I not met them, and had I not been allowed to be part of their life, that just wouldn't have happened. And these people, I'm still in touch with them today, and they came to see me not too long ago, a few years ago, and came to Canada, and it was so awesome to see them, and just to sit there and to be able to tell them thank you so much for what they had done for me, and they're just such lovely people. So I'll never forget it, you know what I mean? Not in a million years, not ever, right? Because they made such a huge impact on my life. And so, if we can do that for someone else, I think that's just so awesome, right? To be able to be there for people, so important, right? Number 5, help the children connect with healthy adults outside their home. Choose adults who care about the children and who are stable and predictable, right? Just to show kids that there are some normal people out there and that not everyone is out to hurt them. But you have to make sure it's supervised. You want to make sure that these kids are not being abused, right? Quite often abused children just go from one person who's abusing them to another. And so you want to make sure that you're making the right decisions about stuff like that. And number 6, help the children find skills or activities where they can succeed. Children who know they are good at something are stronger in themselves, even when they live in abusive homes. Because it helps build some self-esteem, whereas they're probably being battered down emotionally, verbally possibly, and just not being treated properly. If they're good at something and you can sort of help build on that, then they learn to sort of grow, in confidence, right? Their self-esteem starts to grow, right? They start to realize, hey, I'm good at this. It helps them feel better about themselves, right? And number 7, think about the choices you have in your life. Get help with the pressures and problems that make it hard for you to have energy for the children. Get help with addictions or substance abuse. Get help to stop the violence and abuse. Find programs to change the abusive behavior or leave the relationship. If necessary, get legal advice about custody, access, and maintenance issues. And only you can decide what to do about the conditions in your home. However, you need to give the children a safe and stable environment, even if that means they must live somewhere else. So we have about a minute left, and we'll finish up this article. I'm not sure if we'll do that tomorrow. Might tomorrow. Yeah, well, we might finish it up tomorrow, and I'll be back on tomorrow morning. We have about a minute left. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and I'm so happy to be. Let me tell you, you can check out their website, http://dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com, and there's some great information on there. And that's an awesome website full of all kinds of important information regarding signs and symptoms of child abuse. There's a free PDF download on there called the Child Abuse Handbook, full of all kinds of great information regarding signs and symptoms, how to report child abuse, all kinds of references and links, and great information. It's a free download PDF, the Child Abuse Handbook, written by President of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, Donna Shear, best-selling author Donna Shear, and also author and CEO and founder of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, Sandra Dawn Potter. So you want to check that out. That website's awesome. So everybody, just take care of yourselves. Have a great night. Have a good weekend. Be safe in everything that you do. Just enjoy yourselves and have a good time. And don't forget to keep an eye open for those kids out there, and keep an eye out. Make sure they're not being abused, and just sort of keep half an eyeball on them, right? So important. And keep yourself safe this weekend. And I'll be back on tomorrow morning with child abuse prevention, and human rights abuse prevention is up to us. And so we'll be seeing you guys. Take care and have a great night.